Good morning, everybody. It is 7:43 a.m. on the 13th of January, 2024. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my working experience. 36 years ago, I started working at a correctional facility in the Midwest. And, of course, they were always short-staffed. I suppose they probably still are short-staffed. But back in those days, we worked 6 days in a row, and we got 2 days off, and they rotated. And someday I'll explain that schedule. Anyway, they changed it since I left. I left in 2002, but I had 14 years I worked in prisons. And so I'll never forget my first day in the prison and everything. Of course, my training came after. They just put me in the prison, put me on a dormitory. We had open bay dormitories with like maybe 80 inmates. You had the officer's day room in the middle, and then you had 40 on one side and 40 inmates on the other side. And so my initial training was, don't worry, the inmates will tell you what to do. Honest to God. So I was pretty much trained by the convicts. And there's a reason they call them con men, because they pulled everything on the book on me, okay? Of course, they did come up, you know. They would call me on the radio to let them out for lunch or whatever, if I was on the day shift. And then I would line up at the door when they would call the dorm. I would open the door, and they would go out and go to lunch, and then I would have to stand at the door, and they would file back in. And it seems like we counted several times per day. You know, when there was a mass movement like that, we counted and made sure we had everybody back, and then count would clear. So, but I remember the inmates telling me, oh, I got to go to work here. I got to go to work. We had a barber shop. I got to go to work wherever. And okay, sure, I'd let them out. And then somebody would bring them back about 20 minutes later. They would find them roaming around the prison. So I had some good training, though. Yeah, the inmates trained me. So, and they pulled everything in the book on me. Told me all kinds of stories. Me being naive, never worked in a prison before. Sure, I believed them. But then again, I learned to do the same thing to them, you know. I had to keep the dorm in some semblance of order and cleanliness. And so I would ended up telling them, well, you know, the captain, you know, we had correctional officers, and we had sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. And the prison had one major, and then the state had one colonel. So, but I would tell them, well, you know, before they could go out to morning or afternoon rec or whatever, I would tell them, well, the captain told me if the dorm's not clean, you can't go to rec. Oh, no. So they would clean up the dorm. I started conning them somewhat to get what I wanted done, you know. So then they would clean the dorm up. And then I would let him go to rec. The captain never told me nothing, you know. I was just using him to be the bad guy. So this is how I learned how to work in a prison. I worked in a prison 14 years. Now most people, gosh, back in those days, I would say people, if you lasted a year, you did pretty good. The turnover rate was just crazy. I was sitting, a guy retired from the Marine Corps. And I was sitting by the front gate of the prison, and the guy just walked by and said, this is ridiculous, and walked out the door. And so somebody called me up and said, did you see this guy? Well, he quit. And that was not uncommon in those days. People would just say, you know what, this is it. I'm getting out of here. But it was a heck of an interesting experience working inside a correctional institution, a prison, whatever you want to call it. And it's a good life lesson on learning how people are, because inmates are just people who make bad decisions sometimes. So it's a good lesson to you too. You don't want to make these decisions. You know, you don't want to steal a car. You don't want to rob a convenience store. You don't want to do all the things that are illegal. And some people just make bad decisions and end up locked up. But I'm going to be talking about my 14 years experience working inside prisons, and I thought it would be some interesting videos for people to watch. If you like the video, hit like, hit subscribe. And I'm doing this on a new YouTube channel. Sergeant Mack, that's what my nickname was sometimes. So if you like it, hit like, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.